My name's David. I've just completed a master's degree in English, Literature, Culture and Theory at the University of Sussex. And today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how to tackle unseen poetry. Now, key to tackling unseen poetry is recognising the challenge posed by an unseen poetry exam paper. In other words, we need to grasp what it is we are fundamentally being asked to do when we sit this kind of exam. So, in such an exam, a student is being asked to demonstrate an understanding of a particular poem. In order to do this, a student should attempt to show that they have grasped some kind of meaning within a poem. The trouble is, in poetry, meaning is often elusive. Poetry also contains many meanings, and furthermore, poetry attempts to wrestle with complex abstract ideas that are inherently difficult to pin down. In which case, where do we begin? Well, I think the first piece of advice I'd give is to resist that inclination, one a lot of people succumb to once they're in that exam hall and the clock starts ticking, to commence scribbling furiously, having merely skim-read the poem itself. But you don't want to do this. Instead, take the time to read the poem carefully and thoroughly. Remember, time has been allotted for you to do this. So don't let reading the poem become a sort of afterthought. All your ideas, your arguments are founded on your reading the poem. So read through once just to familiarize yourself with the text. Then read through again, this time identifying the main qualities of the poem and annotating as you read. Let's consider then in a bit more detail what annotating a poem entails. So on this second read through, we need to start underlining and making short notes on those aspects of the poem that seem most pertinent with regard to answering the exam question. Now, there's a range of aspects you might consider. So you could start with the title. Now, this is one people often overlook, but you can glean a great deal from the title of a poem. You might also think about imagery. So pick out perhaps a couple of striking metaphors or similes. And what about narrative voice? Ask yourself, is the poem written in third person or first person narrative? What does the kind of narrative voice used add to the poem? Or what does it withhold? You might think about caesura and enjambment as well. Think about the breaks and the pauses. What do they signify? And how about run-on lines? Are there any? And if so, to what end? Think about form and structure. What kind of poem is it? Is it an ode, a sonnet, a villanelle perhaps? Does it follow or break with stanzaic convention? Have a think about repetition. Is there a regular refrain? Are there instances of anaphora? And how about assonance and alliteration? You might want to consider rhyme scheme. Does the poem utilize rhyme? If it does, what pattern emerges? If it doesn't, what does the absence of rhyme communicate? You could look at rhythm and meter as well. Is the poem iambic, trochaic, dactylic? Is the rhythm consistent or does it change? And what about meter? Is the poem written in tetrameter, pentameter, hexameter maybe? I want to stress here that this is by no means an exhaustive list, but it does give you an idea of the sorts of things you want to be scanning the poem for. Next then, you ought to make a very brief plan. So read your now annotated poem through a third time. As you do so, jot down in bullet points the main ideas, perhaps half a dozen or so, that you intend to express. All the time, never lose focus on aiming to answer the exam question. This is of paramount importance. So, with this in mind, you want to start writing your actual response. So, everything you write should, of course, be directed towards answering that exam question. Approach writing your response then, just like any other essay, only scaled down, because obviously we're working within the time constraints of an exam. We begin then with a succinct introduction. This just needs to be a few lines mapping out how you're going to answer the question. Then, working from your bullet point plan, attempt to answer the question by using examples taken from the poem, explaining each one in turn. This, of course, will comprise the bulk of your response. And finally, write a short conclusion, which brings together the points you've made, giving a clear answer to the question posed.